Hello, listeners and viewers. I'm Joseph from Zuma. Zuma, our team works in the wonderful world of recruitment for analytics, insights, and data. We support tech startups, scale-ups, and also all data professionals in the Berlin region. Today's topic, to get right into it for the Data for Good podcast, we're all about mobility for the public sector today, and I'm joined by Hans Schrader, who is Head of Data and Research at MIB, or Mobility Institute Berlin. Welcome, Hans. How's it going with you today?
Hi, I'm doing good. I'm doing great. Thank you.
Good to hear it. And you're looking sprightly as ever, so that's even better. Hans, to get right into data today, could you start by telling us, how did you first get into the world of data?
Yeah, of course. Actually, the story started when I was a bit younger, about 11 years old. My parents bought a PC, and I was super excited because I could finally play my little computer games on the PC. And friends gave me floppy disks with games, and I tried them out. And then after a while, I got this game that I couldn't run because my hard disk was too slow. And then I figured out that I could load this game into the computer's memory, and then it would run fast enough. So it's a very simple example. It has nothing to do with data in general, but it kind of helped me to all those little things. Examples like this helped me to understand how computers work, and I got interested in technology. Then
okay.
A
so
year ago,
how did tech take you then into data?
Well, that's a little bit of a longer story, and I tried out some programming languages at all, and then I studied marketing. That's not related to technology at all, or not too much, at least not when I was studying it. But we had a lot of statistic courses, and we were working a lot with survey data, and that got my interest into the more analytical stuff, so to say. And then I did some non-analytical jobs, and then I ended up at a company called Mein Fernbus. They later merged with Flixbus, and I was responsible there for the survey. So passengers would receive a survey after the trip, and I was responsible for this. So what I did is I created an Excel file, loaded all the data in this Excel file, and that worked really well. And once a week I was updating the data. But then the company was growing crazy, so it was doubling in size every few months. So after a couple of months, my Excel started to run really slow. It was crashing, and it was annoying me. So I sat with some smart data engineers. I explained my problem, and then they created an analytical cube, which kind of solved all the problems. And that made me even more interesting in data. And I also, the company got like a beta license to Microsoft Power BI, which is one of the famous dashboard solutions. And I really loved it. I thought, okay, this is great. This is much better than Excel for what I want to do. So I started building reports. I was kind of a report evangelist in the company. I think some of my former colleagues, I'm sure that they still think that I'm secretly got paid by Microsoft.
You're a strong advocate for Microsoft.
Yeah. But no, Tableau is also fine. But that got my interest, and I got more and more into this data topics. We were doing statistical analysis. In the meantime, I got promoted to a leadership position. So I had a whole team working with me, creating reports, doing interesting analysis. And that's how my data started, how I got started in data. And then
And then what?
Yeah, and then a few years later, my current manager, the founder of Mobility Institute Berlin, he also was one of the founders of Mein Fernbus, was in C-level at Flixbus. He called me and said, "Hey Hans, I have this project and we have some analytical problem that I can't solve. Can you help me with this?" And I said, "Yeah, why not?" We had a meeting. He told me what plans he had. It sounded super interested, and then I switched to the current company.
I see.
Yeah.
And you've been within the mobility tech domain, from what I can see, for over 10 years, even over 12 years now. Would that be accurate?
Oh God, time flies. I think more or less 10 years. Yeah.
Incredible journey.
Yeah.
And Excel, as ever, not to be underestimated. As simple and basic as it is, it seems to be the foundation of many data enthusiasts as they, looking back at those who've progressed through their career. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
And to talk about now, Mobility Institute Berlin, despite the city name in the title, I know MIB, Mobility Institute Berlin, is nationwide. Can you introduce or tell me about some of the work that you're doing over there in terms of findings and perhaps even facts from mobility across the country?
Yeah, sure. So we do consulting, mobility consulting, and are very mission driven. So as a society, we have this big task that we need to reduce CO2 emissions, and all the organization, and mobility is a big part of it. So this is
big
like
contributor.
Yeah, definitely big contributor, especially as driving around cars all day. So cities and public transport agencies, they have this big challenge of reducing CO2 emissions. And what we believe as the MIB is that that in high dense areas, so in cities or urban areas, that it makes a lot of sense to use sustainable modes of transportation, so that people use buses, metro, or walking or biking. So we really believe in this, that we should make the sustainable offer so attractive that people don't even think about buying a car because the alternative is that good. And
it's a great challenge, though. It's a very, very big challenge. Perhaps not so much in heavily built up urban areas, but outside of those heavily built up urban areas, I should imagine from the outside of your industry that it's a great challenge you have.
Yeah, definitely. And it's important. It's a challenge that all the institutes and the cities that are responsible for mobility are working on. And they also have like other things that are going on in the world. That, for example, inflation, Corona in the past. So we help them with all these challenges to make the next steps. And we're doing that by, on the one hand, we have strategic management consulting, and on the other hand, the more data-driven consulting projects. Before I dive into detail, maybe what is strategic management consulting? To give you one example, we sit together with cities, with municipalities, and discuss with them the outlook and how the future for mobility in their city will look like in 2030, 2040, and what they should do.
Wow, really visionary projects or questions that you pose to them.
Yeah, and it's important. We have a big challenge, and you need to do big things to solve those challenges. Yeah, and then the other interesting part is, of course, the data-driven consultancy, where we work on understanding customer behavior. How do people travel in a city? Why? And also how the quality of the offer is, and what we can do to make the mobility offer more fitting to the demand or the customer behavior. Yeah.
Okay, so with that data-driven approach, it might be difficult to kind of summarize and list point, but what data points are you commonly reaching to help people through your consulting?
Yeah. The data points. So one of the things where we're helping them with is to give them this comprehensive view of what's happening in the city. And for this, one thing we're doing is we're looking at the demand. So for example, in one of our projects and for a public transport operator in Hamburg, there in Hamburg, many of the buses, they have sensors, and the sensors, they count how many people enter and exit the bus. And what we did is we collected this data, we built a data model, and then a report on top of it, where you could see how the mobility situation in the whole city is. And that's like one of the examples of data sets we are using. We are also looking at the offer quality. So we have transit schedules in automated form that we analyze. And that's also important. Well, for example, if you have to walk 10 minutes to the next U-Bahn station or the next bus stop, you're less likely to use it than when the stop is just around the corner, basically. So we're building our tools based upon this data to deliver this new insights.
And I wouldn't ask you to reveal any commercially sensitive information, but as you consult throughout the nation to the various cities of Germany, are there any particular findings that are notable or surprising, or what can you tell us about how different cities fare against one another?
Two things I would like to mention. Maybe one example that's really interesting from this is not a German example, but we also have a small office in Spain, and we were doing an analysis for a city with approximately 200,000 inhabitants in Spain. And there we were looking at the demand. We were looking how people were traveling over the course of the day. And we saw that also in the weekdays, there were quite a few people traveling from and to the center in the late evening, so 10, 11 p.m. And we were comparing this with the bus usage of the buses and public transport. And we could see that compared with other cities, the use of buses was quite a bit lower in that city, and especially in the evening. And then we looked a level deeper, and we looked at individual bus lines. And what we found out is that a lot of bus lines, the last departure was already at 9 p.m. And that doesn't work because, especially in Spain, people like to go to restaurants a little bit later than in Germany or in the UK. So if you then can't catch the bus to go back home, you're not going to use the bus and going to travel by car. So this is an example where it was also really easy to make a few adjustments, extend the schedule with a few hours, and then passengers are guaranteed, basically, and you increase ridership. That's like a very visible example. Coming back to Germany, we did a study in last year where we looked at the travel time. And what we actually were doing is we were discussing in the team, like, what makes people using a car and not public transit? And there were like a lot of factors that came out of this brainstorm. But one of the topics that kept coming back and back is the travel time. If you're having if you need to go somewhere, you need 45 minutes with public transit, but with the car, you arrive there in 15 or 20 minutes, you're more likely to use the car. So what we did is we compared for the 11 biggest cities in Germany how much time it costs to go from one place in the city to every other destinations in the city. And what we could find on this is so we did this travel time comparison twice, once for public transport travel time and once for car travel time, and we compared these two things together. And what we found out is that on average, you are 2 times faster with a car.
How does that compare to other countries?
We focused in the study solely on Germany. So we did not make a comparison between countries. It sounds quite drastically, and in a sense it is. It shows that there is a lot of things to do. But the good thing is that there are solutions for it. So it's not something that's unsolvable. With the right investments and the right decisions, you can make public transport much faster. To maybe mention a few. Yeah.
Would your data go as far as to make suggestions as to how a certain public transport would work in this city? For example, if you were to put a train line here, this is based on the data, this is the time it would take to get into the city for the average person compared to public bus system, for example. Do you offer those solutions?
Yeah, so what we at some of the projects that we're doing a transportation demand analysis, or we set up transportation models where we can test the scenarios, like what happens when we create a new U-Bahn line here, or what happens if we increase the speed of the bus network. And then we can, with this model, we can see at the end or predict how many people will then using this metro line, or how many people will switch from car to public transport. Yeah, we're doing this.
Fantastic. What does the data say comparing Berlin, Hamburg, and Munich, for example? What does the data tell us about the efficiency and practicality of public mobility in those cities?
Yeah, for looking at this travel time analysis, I think the interesting fact is that the general outcome, that the car is 2 times faster than public transport, but there are of course differences between cities. So Berlin and Munich, for example, they are quite far in the top, so they're scoring really good, and Hamburg scores a little bit less. And that has some different causes. If you look deeper, there are some factors like that in Hamburg. There is a big river that's more or less splits the city in two. That makes it a little bit more difficult to organize public transport. And then in other cities, like in Berlin, you have a really good rail network. You have a tram. Different transportation system. And then of course what we could do is we dive into detail and can see at the individual spots, and then it's when it gets the most interesting, how good or bad are the individual locations, and then usually a consultant can make a good recommendation based upon this specific situation.
Okay. Mobility in the public sector, it's not historically sophisticated, let's say, or at least not in its application of data analytics. With Mobility Institute Berlin, what are you folks doing to advance the public mobility sector from a data perspective?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, especially if you compare it with the Berlin tech startups. They're not as far. But we are helping them with this. And that's a good thing that we have like the mobility knowledge, but also the data expertise in-house. And in a nutshell, we do 3 or 4 things that really help them with this. We start by making the data accessible, and often they have like data in different teams within their organizations, or sometimes even across organizations in the region. And then what helps them already is to get this data collected from different places and make it available in one location. And that's the start. But then data on its own is just data. Yeah, you need to draw insights out of the data, and we are doing this by making it visual and easy to use. So often data and mobility means you can visualize it great on maps. So we create a lot of maps where you can see at a glance how good your offer is, or where demand is higher, where it is a little bit lower. And we provide our clients, the users, the possibility to zoom in and to dig deeper. So we'll provide a really granular level of analysis to dig deep into individual weekdays, individual hours of the day, for example, so that they can make their own analysis based upon what we deliver. And then last but not least, I already mentioned it, predictive analysis and optimizations. So the results of those traffic models, of the predictions of how the mobility will look like if we make some changes, that's something that we also provide.
Predictive analysis.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
There was, I think the best example is what we touched upon before, that what happens if you're creating a new Uber line, or what happens if you double the how you call it, the bus frequency, that you have to wait less long for the next bus or for the next train to arrive. And we can measure and see what the effect will be on the future ridership.
Do you look into costing at all?
Cost, of course, is also an important factor, because you cannot only like put new U-Bahn lines and double the amount of offer. That would cost a lot of money. So we always take into account the cost factor as well. Yes, good. I'm sure you'd go into much more detail than just yes or no. We do take it into account. You mentioned data accessibility and data availability. I recognize that's a constant challenge for organizations to get right, so that their people can make the best use of data, and therefore data be more valuable to them. So it's great that you're addressing that directly, and certainly with perhaps non-technical stakeholders, making it incredibly visual and allowing them to dig deep wherever they need to, especially with mapping. It's always and very easy on the eye. And maybe what I found interesting is like we had a project like 2 or 3 years ago for a client, and they were really not using data to their full potential, to say it in a diplomatic way. So they were doing a lot of analysis with Excel, and Excel is not wrong. It can be the best tool in some use cases, but they could have used
foundations of your data life, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah. It all starts with Excel if you start from a business background. But still, like, we are living in 2022, and they could have used like other tools. And so we had this project where we applied data, where we showed them some nice visualizations, things that what they could do. And then I kind of forgot about these clients. We were doing other projects for other clients. And then 2 weeks ago, we started a new project with the same client where I was also involved. And I was flabbergasted, because then I had a discussion with the client about that they would like to have the Python code that we were writing. We were discussing a couple of machine learning and optimization topics. And there I was like, wow, they really make this big change. And of course, that's not all due to the projects that we did. There were other factors involved as well. But the thing is that if you do some things, if you show them what is possible, if you give the inspiration, it encourages them to take the steps and to be a more data driven company.
That's fantastic. That is what we all hope for, isn't it? For companies to take data extrapolation and data usage into their own hands, and you've enabled them, and that's served to be a motivation as well. Going back to data, I'm curious about geography. So if we look at, in your work, you are nationwide, and the data that you will take, no doubt, is from across various cities in Germany. But as a data professional in the public mobility sector, where do you look around the world, i.e. other countries? Which places are particularly advanced in their use of data to help you in your own work? Or is Germany at the top of data innovation for public mobility?
It's not in the top, but it's making progress. What I really like as good examples of other countries which are doing really well with data is, on the one hand, the Nordics. So Finland, for example, they have lots of open data that they publish. And that's a sign that on a governmental level, they are really far with data, and they're really taking it seriously, using it. Then in the Netherlands, there is like this card. So if you travel with public transportation, you check in, and then at the station where you exit, you check out. And this is a system I love from a perspective of a passenger, because if I travel in Germany and I go to Hamburg or I go to Munich, I always need to figure out, what ticket do I need? How does it work? And then it's tempting then, if you're at the airport, to take a taxi instead of, but of course I'm not traveling by plane anyway. So, sometimes it happens.
Does that suggest cooperation across all of the cities? If they're able to have one card that works throughout the country, as opposed to, say, the UK or Germany, where we have different ticketing for different cities.
Yes, I don't know how they did it, how they made all these organizations and to cooperate, but they did, and it works really well. And what's the nice thing is, like, it's not only good from a customer perspective, but you also have this data. They have data, and they know exactly how many people traveled from A to B at what time. Of course, it's not that easy to access this data, and they don't know where you live, so they take privacy seriously, but they are able to optimize their mobility because they have this good data set. And that's like a really best practice example that's not that easy to replicate and to introduce in a country like Germany. But I hope that works as an inspiration. And in Germany, there are steps made in the last years. So I remember that 4 years ago, could be hard to get the the schedule of a random city in Germany in a digital format. It was often not available, and now this data is available on a Germany-wide level. So authorities understand this, and there are different rules in place that encourage cities and organizations to publish data. So in the last years, there was a big progress being made, and this will continue in the next years.
Interesting. Looking across the world now at private businesses, private mobility businesses, it's clear that they have commercial information, commercial data that they wouldn't want to share. But is there any cooperation between these private mobility businesses when you consider, I'm thinking of the scooters like Bird and Tier, all those scooters that I see littering cities in every country in Europe and even beyond. And then I also think about how Finland is exposing or making all their data open source, or much of their data open source. Is there much cooperation between the private sector companies with respect to data sharing?
There is cooperation, but it depends really on a regional level. So in some cities, for example, in Berlin, you have this a great app Yelby, and there they try to integrate a lot of private operators as well. So there you can book a ticket, also to use certain scooters via your general app. And in Hamburg, they have like the taxi-like service for which they also work together with a private operator. So there are some examples, but it depends really from region to region.
Interesting. Thank you for that. I'm also conscious of time, and although I've got lots of other questions to ask, I feel like it's my duty in the pursuit of data for good to ask you for a piece of advice that you might share to the data community. So with that, when we consider professionals coming up in the data industry, particularly in Germany, if you would, what advice would you give to those people?
Yeah, I would like to highlight one point, and that's to take initiative. And that's, in my view, it really helped me to advance my career. But what I mean with it is on the one hand, if you see a colleague struggling in your team or department, go to him or her and ask how you can help. But it also means cross-departmental, between departments or teams. If you have an idea of how you can do a certain data analysis for a different team, I would encourage people and advise them to have a short talk to them and to approach them, explain your idea. And then often that won't work out because they have already done it or are not interested. But I'm sure that they will appreciate it. And the next time when there is like a data question, they might as well come to you because they can remember you. And that's really helped me personally. It's good for the company on the one hand, because it shouldn't be that especially in big organizations, it's sometimes you have like this communication between team leads or between department heads, and then a lot of things happen top down. But I think it's good to do it a little bit more in an organic way. And if you're taking initiative, it's good for the company, but you're also shaping your own task and your own careers. And so that's the advice I would give. Take initiative. It will help you, and it will make your job much more enjoyable.
Take initiative. I'm getting that. That's a very independent approach. It seems like you're also encouraging collaboration. So working with peers, but not only peers in your own teams or your own department, but peers across other departments.
Yep.
Interesting.
Definitely.
And you also mentioned top-down versus organic. It strikes me that organizations should be from the advice, if people were to live into the advice that you give, that organizations should further or better encourage cross communication and cross collaboration across teams. And that takes us into topics like data mesh, and embedding a data-driven culture, embedding data-driven decisions across different teams. They're really future-minded initiatives that I believe companies have to be considering more and more now, and your advice ties in very nicely. Yeah. Hans, thank you for the advice, and thank you very much for your time today in talking about public mobility or data within public mobility. I've really enjoyed it, and as you can see, I've got lots of different questions. Perhaps next time we could also go into maybe a historical case study of yours, so we could really understand what data points you're grabbing, how you're using the data, especially in the predictive sense as well. So I look forward to next time. It
was a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, wonderful. To you too, Hans. Okay.
All right.
And to anyone else who has questions of Hans or of Mobility Institute Berlin or of Zuma and the data recruitment work that we do, feel free to drop either of us a private message or leave a comment on YouTube or even LinkedIn. All right. Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Hans. Goodbye now.
Goodbye.
Ciao.